Hi there, my name is Moray. I am a fashion designer who is going to make films one day. Today we are covering a queen that is my favourite ruler in ancient history. Her name is Cartimandua. She is famous for being one of Rome's first client queens. She is the British queen who surrendered to the Romans. Our most famous ancient leader here in the UK is Boudicca, who did the opposite. Boudicca is famous for staging a revolt against the Romans. And compared to Cartimandua, there's so much known about Boudicca. However, Cartimandua is a queen who is slept upon. Slept upon in terms of scholarship and slept upon in terms of research. So we will be discussing her life and asking, why did she surrender to the Romans? So let's get into it. So there's not so much known about Cartimandua's early life. In fact, there's not so much scholarship on Cartimandua. What we do know about Cartimandua is from Tacitus, the Roman writer. It's also alleged that Cartimandua's name appeared on Claudius's triumphal arch as one of the 11 rulers who surrendered to Rome. But mostly what we know is from Tacitus. Now, Cartimandua is said to have inherited her throne. She was a queen. She didn't marry into it. I wanted to link this. This is some recent research done by the University of Durham. Durham University has figured out that actually when the Celts were flourishing, women are the ones who inherited the thrones and men had to marry into this matriarchal line. They found this out by a lot of carbon dating, and it supports the idea that Cartimandua was a queen in her own right. She did have a husband, Venutius. However, well, she got around. So we're going to find out a little bit more about him in about 5 minutes or so. However, before we get started, I want to talk about what was the history of the Romans in Britain. Britain, like we think of it now, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and obviously England, was not what it was like thousands of years ago. The Celts were separate tribes, often fighting against each other and enslaving each other. You should go to St. Fagan's Museum and learn all about the Celts. It's in Cardiff, or it's near Cardiff, and it's fantastic. The concept of the United Kingdom only became a thing in, I think, the 1800s, around the time of Treaty of the Union. However, I will make a video about Celtic identity and who is Celtic anyway, because I think that's a fascinating topic for a woman who wants to make a film about the Celts. So, obviously, Julius Caesar is the first Roman leader, not emperor because he was a dictator, leader to invade. And his campaigns in 55 AD and 54 AD were highly written about. In fact, he wrote about them. Whilst Caesar did not conquer Britain, emperors after him during the Empire Age had a bit of a pop. Augustus tried. Augustus's evil son, Tiberius. What? Why are you laughing?
It's
Well, no, but we can get into this, but Augustus's evil son did have a little luck, but realised that the conquest of the British Isles could not be done. Caligula, bloody Caligula, attempted an invasion in 40 AD, but what did his soldiers do? He didn't do it properly, but his soldiers ended up gathering seashells to show their victory and never conquered, so it didn't go down so well. However, here comes Claudius. Claudius, I have a soft spot for Claudius. You know, I love Messalina. I relate to Messalina so much. However, Claudius is the one who was successful. And when I say successful, however, Claudius was somewhat successful. He needed something to solidify his power in Rome, considering what a simp he was. You should watch my Claudius's love life video by here to show what kind of character he was. And conquering what is known as the UK was a power move. It was bold. However, Claudius had a problem. Caradoc, or that's Welsh, it's Caratacus, but should I call him Caradoc or Caratacus for this video? I don't know. Caratacus. Claudius had a problem. His problem was the leader, Caratacus. However, this is where we learn more about Cartimandua. Caratacus, who was very, very strong in leading the resistance against Rome, finally lost during the Battle of River Medway. The Battle of River Medway led the Romans to capturing southeast Britain, and Caratacus, or Caradoc, because I'm going to get those names into just because they're translated differently into the Welsh language. Caratacus losing meant that he was captured, so was his tribe, so were his daughters and his wife. Whilst his wife and his daughters were captured, Caratacus had to flee, and to whose kingdom did he come across? Cartimandua's. Cartimandua, who was queen of the Brigantes. Caratacus asks Cartimandua to protect him. The Brigantes was a huge tribe. It had so much influence. What does Cartimandua do? She hands Caratacus over to the Romans. However, the question is, why was Cartimandua on the Roman side? Now, we don't have any evidence or any proof of what the Romans gave Cartimandua to become loyal to them. Was Cartimandua seeing Rome's power, hoping that she could negotiate trade deals and become rich from being a client queen? Did they say they were going to kill her tribe, her family? Or did they offer her, well, riches, power? But we do know that she handed Caratacus over to the Romans. And as I mentioned previously, these Celtic tribes, they weren't united like the United Kingdom is today. Now the countries in the United Kingdom aren't united, but but the Celts back then, the tribes were working against each other. They were often fighting. So was Cartimandua mad at Caratacus? We don't know, but what we do know is that Caratacus, well, he was destined to be paraded around Rome and then killed. However, Caratacus does ask for one last wish: to speak in the Senate. Caratacus' speech is said to have been so glorious and so praising of the Romans that the Romans and Emperor Claudius let him go free. So Caratacus, fiercely resisting Rome and trying to save his tribe and what we know now as Celtic identity, ended up living in a villa in Rome, pretty much. Now then, I've got to admit, the writers did have a lot of bias. And Caratacus probably was written about in a way that supported Roman identity. Cartimandua, whilst being supported by her husband Venutius, was in a bit of a difficult position. Venutius did not believe Cartimandua did the right thing. So what does Cartimandua do? Cartimandua leaves Venutius for his servant and marries him. Venutius then decides, okay, it is time for war. Cartimandua's tribe was even turning on her. So Venutius wages war against Cartimandua, his former wife, and actually the Romans protect her. Maybe Cartimandua did do a good deal with the Romans. In 69 AD, we're gonna move on a little bit, and we're gonna go to the year of the 4 emperors in 69 AD, which was a deeply chaotic time. And Venutius waits for his chance to wage war again. However, there's a problem. Rome is in chaos. The year of the 4 emperors. Rome was not very cash money at the time. There were idiots in power, quite frankly. and Rome has limited protections for Cartimandua. But Venutius is still mad, so Cartimandua has to flee. However, where did Cartimandua flee? Did she end up joining Caratacus in Rome? Did she ask another tribe for protection and maybe they said no and she ended up getting killed, getting karma for what she did to Caratacus? What happened to her? She's written out of history. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.